when I went to Argentina, the first real gig I landed there, and I went there. There was a lot of reasons I went to Argentina. A lot of reasons. Heartbroken, and young and wild, and 17 other things. But one of my excuses was Will James had always said, a good cowboy can find a job anywhere. And I guess I wanted to see if I was a good cowboy or not. And so I went to Argentina and I just kind of showed up. And I worked on several different ranches down there, but the very first one I worked on was called Maria Paloma. A beautiful little ranch. And Maria Paloma, Paloma's dove. So it was Maria the dove. Beautiful, beautiful little mom and pop family owned ranch. And the folks that owned it, they lived in Buenos Aires and worked white collar jobs. And myself and the guy that really ran it were there. And his name was Pablo. And we lived, there was a town close by, Capitan Salmento, and he was from there and he had a family there. But he lived at the ranch most of the time. He'd go spend a weekend with his family. His little house, had a dirt floor and thatch roof, and there was a jillion kids there that were kids and grandkids and neighbor kids. And I can see why he wanted to stay at the ranch most of the time. But anyway, Pablo, he one of his things he would always say was, he said, if you want to make God laugh, just make a plan. And that was kind of his mantra. You know, whatever you were doing when it would go wrong, which inevitably, if you're working, and especially if you're working on a ranch, I suppose if you're doing anything, I've never done anything else, but you know, something goes wrong. You make the best laid plans of mice and men, and it'll go wrong. And so if you want to make God laugh, just make a plan, because it's alluding to you're going to do it God's way, not your way. So he would say that all the time. And so we shared a room. It was upstairs. It was above the kitchen. It was just a big wide room, and there was, I don't know, 4 or 5 beds in there. Way more beds than that little ranch needed. Wouldn't have ever needed that many hands. There was just the two of us in there, and he was on one side and I was on the other. And he'd wake up at night. He smoked. He was a heavy smoker, real heavy smoker. And he'd wake up at night and need a cigarette, and I don't know if it's him rustling around or the sound of the cigarette or whatever would wake me up. And I'd see him across the room. We didn't have electricity. I'd see just across the room the glow of that cigarette. He'd be laying there in bed smoking, which I know that's terribly, terribly dangerous, but he did it anyway. He'd be laying there in bed smoking, propped up on his pillow, and I'd say, "What are you doing, Pablo?" And he'd say, "Oh, I'm just laying here trying to think of different ways to make God laugh." And he was, you know, planning out the next day or planning out the week, whatever he was planning, because he ran that place. I just did what he told me to. But I always remembered that. I always thought that was kind of funny. Oh, I'm just laying here thinking of ways to make God laugh, because he knew he could make a plan, and it might rain, or horse might buck somebody off, or the cattle might do whatever they did, and he just had a good way of thinking about it.